Hello, everyone. This is Christy. Welcome to Let's Talk Dollitics. I'm going to give you a brief explanation about this series. So, my channel is AG Takes Over. I typically bring you lighthearted content, anything related to American Girl dolls. Sometimes that's stuff I've bought for them, stuff I've made for them. Kind of chatty videos talking about what my goals are or how I talk to people, what life is like as an adult collector. Anything and everything showing you my doll spaces, how to organize them, how I budget for my dolls, different products that I find, dressing them, creating new and unique outfits for them, reviewing products that I come across. All of this stuff is generally, I'm going to say quality content and also pretty lighthearted. So when you're having a heavy day, it is a nice place to come and escape, right? And I want this channel to continue to be that for people who need that. And we all need that from time to time. However, the world is a very dark place right now, especially in the United States. So I noticed that my own fears and frustrations and the primacy of the world's events in my mind was showing up in my videos, which is fine. I worried that it was going to make it too unpredictable for you all to know, is Christy putting out a video that is an escape or that's going to be a rough one? So I've come up with what I hope will be a nice solution for everyone. I usually do 2 videos a week. I'm going to stick with that posting schedule. That's the game plan anyway. And one will be my typical stuff. My views are evident, but they're not the center. It is much more doll-focused content. And then this new series, it's clearly labeled. It says, Let's Talk Dollitics. Watch it when you're in the headspace to watch it. And I do hope you will watch it because I'm going to follow a format that's really predictable and I think will help keep people from feeling quite so overwhelmed and hopeless and helpless. So basically 7 pieces to this. One is this intro. You're going to learn to skip ahead to the timestamp I'll put on the screen here. And so if you're watching this every single week, just skip. The first part is going to be recurring because I want to explain the series to people who might be watching for the first time. Second, an image or a quote that might be a little bit alarming or jarring, but that's going to serve as the intro to that particular week's topic. Third, some background information and updates about that particular topic. And I will try to include some additional reading or video links in the description, so be sure to always check there. Fourth, an inspiring or hopeful quote that is relevant to that week's topic. 5, some specific doable action steps related to the topic, and there should be enough of them that even though you can't do all of them, you should at least be able to pick one, hopefully multiple. 6th, some good news. Possibly not even related to the topic of that week. I just want to end on a note of not absolutely everything is awful. Even in the midst of really scary stuff, there are creative, kind, compassionate people doing just very cool things that we should know about and we should share about. And then 7th will be probably I will dress a doll each week, and at the end I'll just show you like, all right, here's what I put on my doll and here's why I picked it, and isn't she cute, and have a great week. I'll see you back for more Dollitics next week. Cool? All right, let's get started with the topic of this week. All right, here goes. The inaugural edition. Of course, we're going to talk about immigration. Look, I've got a short list here of things that I want to talk about in future episodes, and some of them are going to keep coming up because they are the main focus and they're dealing with the main targets of a lot of the brutality that's going on right now. But it's not a one issue kind of thing. We're dealing with a lot of different things all at once, so I'm going to try to bounce around a bit, but one per week. So some things that I'm not covering today, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service, the cuts that have happened to them, the impact of those cuts, the further cuts that the president wants to make. So that's a topic all on its own. A recurring one will be things that are negatively impacting trans and other LGBTQIA plus individuals. If the specific things that are going to impact or that are threatening to impact folks with disabilities, this notion of an autism registry that RFK Jr. has bandied about, Medicaid, like what exactly the cuts, if you've been hearing about the cuts in this, HR1, the budget reconciliation bill, what are those cuts? What actually ended up passing? A lot of things get taken out and added and changed. It went from the House to the Senate, back to the House. Like, try to give a breakdown of what actually got passed and what states can and can't do about it. And just what you need to know, and is there anything that you can do? Vaccines, status of COVID vaccines, and what you can do if you don't want them to only be available to people over 65, and who is being put in the CDC, who is being put in these positions, and what you can do to voice your discontent about that, who you can recommend instead, how do you promote science, those kinds of things. For-profit detention centers, we could do a not deep, because I'm not making these really long, but we could do a mid-level dive into who owns the for-profit detention centers. What contracts did they just get? How are they benefiting from this hysteria that the administration is helping to foster? How are they benefiting from the snatch and grabs where they don't give people a chance to show their legal status? They just put them in a detention center, and how much are they making per day off of that? All of that kind of stuff. Surveillance state, it's a terrifying topic, but we should talk about Palantir and which companies are selling our data and mining our data, and how bad that could get, and what ways you can try to, what you can do to help keep it from getting becoming the worst case scenario. Alligator Alcatraz, we are going to talk about the kidnappings, reproductive rights, and encroachment, further restriction of reproductive rights. Cryptocurrency, maybe it's something you've never felt is remotely interesting to you. I haven't felt like it's anything interesting to me, but I've learned some things about who's benefiting from it and how certain crypto things are being pushed through, and what that could mean to me, somebody who's not interested. Like, how could it negatively impact me, and how can I help make sure that it doesn't become the worst case scenario? AI, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere right now, but we should talk about environmental impacts and regulations, and what was snuck into the budget bill and actually didn't pass, which is a win, and a win as a result of a lot of people shedding light on it and being involved and being very vocal. But they're going to try to push it through some other way, so we need to stay aware of that and make sure that we're active on that front. All of the roles that you can play besides protester. Every time I post that I've gone to a protest, somebody will inevitably say, I wish I could. Physically, I can't, or for my safety, or for whatever reason, I can't. And I came across a post. A lot of what I'm going to be doing is just compiling information that I've come across and sharing it here, because maybe you wouldn't see it otherwise. It's not necessarily original stuff, just trying to pull it all together and present it to you in like digestible bites. But I came across a really great post that I'd like to expand on one week, just listing like all these extra roles. Protester is one role, but the people who donate water bottles and this and that and supplies to protesters is another role, and the people who do this is another role, and the people who provide transportation is another role, and XYZ, right? So that I think would be a very empowering video to make. This notion of losing loudly, I've mentioned it a couple of times to people, but I want to expand more on what that looks like with regard to the budget reconciliation bill. Like, I could go on for days, unfortunately, because there is so much bad stuff. But fortunately, every one of those videos should hopefully make you feel, probably first, horrified, but also later more informed, give you some additional reading resources and video resources that you can look at on your timeline, and help you feel like there are things you can do. That is critical, and I cannot overstate this. The authors of Project 2025, the administration, they want you so scared, so overwhelmed, so saddened. System shutdown. they want you to check out. They want you to tune out. They want it to be too much. They want it to be so much and so hurtful that you can't watch anymore, that you can't listen anymore, that you just have to check out. That's the strategy, because when you do, they can just move forward unobstructed. And we can't do it. We cannot give in. I don't mean that you need to watch and consume horrifying images and hear heartbreaking stories every spare minute of your day, but we can't check out. We can't just bury our heads and hope that someone else will take care of this. It's not on any one individual's shoulders. That's the good news, but it has to be on all of our shoulders. That's the part you might not want to hear. I don't know. So the thing that I want to talk about this week is immigration. And I want to start with this image right here. And I'm going to read it so that it's accessible. It says, this was right after the passing, I said, H.R. 1, the Budget Reconciliation Bill, the one big beautiful bill, went House, got changed up in the Senate, then passed the Senate, went back to the House, changed up a little bit, and then finally passed. So with that process, with this bill, ICE just got a bigger budget than the entire Russian military. This is one aspect of our forces. Let that sink in. A masked, unaccountable, secret police that does not give due process is about to invade our country with the force of an occupying military power. I'm going to save I'll probably put it in some extra reading about the exact amounts, what their budget was before, what their budget is now, those kinds of things. How much of the budget is going to the private detention centers? How much is going to raises for the ICE agents? How much is going to each thing? Because I've come across that information, but I don't have it memorized and I don't have it pulled up. So I'll put those details in a link in the description. But I wanted to start with this. This is disturbing. This is horrifying. I know I said this is going to be background, but I kind of want to do this one a little bit differently and just jump into some action steps specific to having conversations with individuals. And then the action steps part that's supposed to be later will be more general. So I posted a month ago, something mid-June, just some thoughts after I'd been thinking about this notion of talk to people in the language that they understand. So that advice had been on my mind, and I was really thinking about how it relates to people who have been supportive of ICE. Oh, and another reason that you can't rest and you can't totally shut down and tune out is because the propaganda machine is not shutting down. It is not shutting down. So you rest because you need to, but you got to get right back at it because those machines and bots is set in motion and it's powerful and we can't sleep on this issue. Anyway, I want to talk about how to have conversations with people, real people that you know. Don't argue with bots. That is, I'll talk about that later. Don't argue with bots. Real people that you know who maybe they're neighbors, maybe they're people at work, maybe they're friends, maybe they're acquaintances, maybe they're family members. If they either actively support ICE or they just don't see it as a big deal. It doesn't affect me, or I think it's fine, or they show a gross misunderstanding of what's going on, then we need them to see it differently. We need to be willing to have those conversations. If in your heart of hearts you believe that this person is absolutely a lost cause, you can always just give them some good links and invite them to look into stuff and get back to you. And if they won't do it, then you probably weren't going to have a constructive conversation anyway. But if somebody seems remotely open, we need them to see it differently. So take that as an opportunity to help them see it differently. We need more numbers And some of that is going to come from this kind of activism, right? Mobilizing people who already happen to mostly agree with me. I'm guessing you're watching this, right? But some of it is going to have to come from convincing people who don't see it the same way. So I came up with some ideas, and I would love to have additional ideas in the comments, but I was kind of picturing like different people. If I've got this imaginary person in front of me and they identify as pro-life, right? Then let's talk about the danger that is posed to pregnant people being detained. They are often being pushed to the concrete, mistreated, physically, it's, excessive force being used against them. And not everybody, like, they're not stopping to see, are you pregnant? They're just doing this. So, and there are many videos that show they're just running, plowing someone down, putting them on the concrete. They are experiencing, so these pregnant individuals who are being detained are experiencing extreme stress. They are, in some cases, I've heard interviews with people who were detained saying they occasionally had Zumba, but mostly it's a prison. I just sat there, like, wondering why I'm here because I follow every single immigration thing that they ever send to me. I always fill out my paperwork on time. I'm on the path to citizenship, and I was taken into a detention center and stuck here for 5 months, just twiddling my thumbs. And even though it wasn't horribly abusive, it was also awful. And then others have said, I wasn't given a blanket. I was abused. There have been accusations made of torturous conditions. So it does run the gamut. And so it is quite possible. I can't tell you what is happening on the inside of any given detention center, but it is quite possible that they run the risk of receiving inadequate food. They certainly run the risk of inadequate medical attention. Now, there could be somebody who's detained who doesn't even know that they are pregnant yet. And then they are put in an extremely stressful situation. No access to go get prenatal care because nobody even knows that they're pregnant. They wouldn't even think to say this. And they may have been, manhandled prior to getting there or while they're there. All of these things, detainment disrupts the continuity of their prenatal care. And all of these things can be harmful to their pregnancies. So whether or not you embrace the term pro-life, like I am very much pro-life. That is why I'm pro-choice, because people need choices in order to support and sustain life. But whether you are identify as anti-abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, however you identify, if you run into somebody who says, ICE is cool, I stand strongly against abortion under all of these or any circumstances, then maybe that is an in to find some way to help them take this thing that they already have a strong feeling about and see how their neutral or pro-ICE stance doesn't make sense, right? And not in an attacking way. You're not going to accomplish anything. If you can, find the calm, find the patience, and talk to somebody through a lens that they are looking, try to get to their perspective and see it the way that, they look at life, you might make some headway there. And if you can, and that can be the door open, right? If they go, you got a point, let that digest. Talk to them more about that. Find more information about that. Try to find things that further illustrate that point. And if they seem receptive, then go down that road a little ways. They might, now that they are open to the possibility that this is not so innocent, this is not so what America needs, this is not necessarily making America great, now you could talk to them possibly, potentially, about other aspects of it that are horrible in a way that clicks with them. Second option, let's say you're talking with somebody who's pro-family. Their big thing is families belong together. If they've ever said a child needs a mother and a father, if they've ever made comments about the damages of being from a broken home, personally, I feel like I can taste a little bile when I hear people say that. As somebody who raised my daughter largely as a single mother by choice, and now is raising my younger daughter with two mamas, I have big feelings about that. But you know what? If I run into somebody who really does feel that way, then couldn't I point out, um, if you believe that, then hopefully you can see why current ICE activity is concerning. And you can pull up concrete examples, videos, testimonials, news sources, like valid news sources, illustrating how many families have been pulled apart by this. How these children are being separated from their loving parents, from their nuclear family household, because of this blanket racial profiling, horrifying. I mean, speak their language. If they don't find it horrifying, maybe don't say that until you see that glimmer change in their eyes, if they're starting to get on board. But talk to them about the very real harm done by an intact, loving, intentional family being ripped apart by ICE. That part I can get on board with. Whether I think everybody needs a mother and a father the entire time, no. But do I think that it is disruptive and damaging and horrible to rip families apart? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I can talk about that with someone. Number three is if somebody says things like, well, I don't mind if they're here, but they should be doing it legally. You have so much to work with this person. First of all, maybe point out Elon Musk's own complex history. The fact that people like Laura Loomer and Barron Trump were, by their definitions, anchor babies, because they were born to at least one parent who was not a U.S. citizen at the time of their birth. That means that they have birthright citizenship, the very thing that this administration is threatening to do away with. So talk about birthright citizenship and the hypocrisy of the people who are threatening to do away with it. Talk about how complicated it is to do it legally, and instead lean into the fact that being in the country without proper documentation is not a criminal offense, just like not paying your taxes on time is a violation of the law, but it's not a criminal violation. There are like administrative violations of law and criminal violations of law, and overstaying or being in the country undocumented in and of itself is a civil violation. On that same front, offer to help educate them. Educate yourself on what does it take to be in this country, do it the legal way. Because the answer is incredibly complex. It depends on how old you are. It depends on what family members you have. It depends on how much money you have. It depends on what country you have. It depends on what year you're trying to get in. It depends on a whole lot of things that the average citizen has no clue about. NOLO Press, NOLO Press, has some very good plain English legal guides. Back in the day, and I could stand myself to refresh, but I read the one on one of theirs on immigration law, and it was an eye-opener to me. So it talks about quotas and family sponsorships and wait times and different kinds of visas, and reading up on something like that may help you be better prepared to talk with people who keep falling back to the do it the legal way line. Also, there are plenty. I'm not even going to search them for you. You can search them. Plenty of cases of ICE in recent months detaining people who are here legally. Like, who are actual citizens, like full-blown, naturalized or birthright or born and raised here, but citizens, and people who are here with legal, visas, with valid, legal permanent residence, valid student visas, things like that. So really, we can shut down with information if we can find somebody who's a little bit approachable and say, I understand what you're saying. Can we talk about One, how hard it is to do this legally in some cases, and two, how even when people are doing it legally, this administration and ICE is being unleashed on people indiscriminately, and they are detaining citizens. They are detaining people who did it legally. So at the very least, you should be willing to speak out about that part. At the very least, you should be willing to get on board with me and push our representatives for more accountability so that people who have gone through the trouble of doing it the legal way aren't at the exact same risk of being detained. It's a strategy, right? By the way, I think I said this already, but I'm not your news source. I'm just giving you some thoughts and trying to be productive and use my platform in a positive way. And like I said, separate a little bit so you know which videos are going to be heavier and which videos are going to be lighter. But by all means, like fact check, read more. I am just one source. Next one, the people who identify as constitutionalists, if you know that somebody's like, the Constitution matters, follow the Constitution, and in the same, breath or in a, on a different day or whatever, they talk about how ICE is fine and they support ICE and law and order and whatnot. I think you can lean into the parts of the Constitution that you feel are most at risk and the parts that seem to be actively ignored. So potential constitutional violations currently going on. And this is a partial list because it's a month ago, so probably it's grown. There are lawsuits regarding all of these currently in place. Violations of the 14th Amendment and due process. Lots going on there. An executive order aiming to end birthright citizenship. Same thing Barron has. Same thing Laura Loomer has. For children of non-citizens has been blocked by federal judges because it was deemed unconstitutional, as the 14th Amendment broadly confers birthright citizenship. So the 14th Amendment of the Constitution says birthright citizenship is a thing. A president can't come in and say, I say it's not anymore. That's the Constitution. You don't get to just go against it with an executive order. That's not how our government works. So you can point out, great that you're a constitutionalist. I would like our president to be a constitutionalist as well. He's not. Here are some examples. Can you be with me and agree that we should be speaking up to our representatives and senators saying, push for the president to follow the Constitution? That's reasonable, right? That's reasonable. Some other constitutional issues with this administration. The zero tolerance family separation policy has faced legal challenges with arguments that separating families without finding a threat to children violates due process and constitutes unconstitutional discrimination. Violations of the First Amendment. Actions taken against law firms critical of the administration, including revoking security clearances and terminating government contracts, are being challenged as violations of the First Amendment. So you are punishing this law firm, canceling its contracts, canceling its security clearance, all of these things because they've been critical of your administration. Their critique is protected under the First Amendment. So if you're a constitutionalist, you shouldn't be doing that. Concerns have been raised about the administration's targeting of foreign nationals, including students, researchers, and legal residents involved in or near pro-Palestinian activism, potentially chilling free speech and dissent, and that is a First Amendment issue. So if you're a constitutionalist, you're supposed to stand for all these things. Free speech. Violations of the Fourth Amendment. Federal judges have ruled that ICE's practices of issuing detainers without obtaining an administrative warrant. You may have read this. There are different kinds of warrants. If you detain without getting an administrative warrant, some judges are saying that violates the statutory arrest authority. So that is a Fourth Amendment issue. A recent class action settlement requires ICE to stop the alleged rampant constitutional violations related to issuing detainers without neutral probable cause review. So that is neutral probable cause review is a constitutional term. You are required to have that review prior to issuing these detainers, and they have not been doing that. And so there was a class action suit against ICE, and they have been required to do it. Is it not reasonable to say they settled because they were violating the Constitution? We should make sure that they actually are going through with getting neutral probable cause review before issuing detainers. Yes, that seems very reasonable. These are not radical ideas, right? Some state and local law enforcement agencies have been facing challenges when they're participating in immigration enforcement actions based on the ICE detainers, because there's a risk of violating the Fourth Amendment rights of individuals, including American citizens. So some of the local and state have been trying to be involved in immigration enforcement actions, but they're like, some of your ICE detainers, they're violating the Fourth Amendment, so now we're going to get in trouble. Couple more under constitutional. So if somebody's like, I'm a constitutionalist, look, you have so much ammo. Undermining the rule of law and checks and balances. So legal experts and organizations like Amnesty International, pretty legit organization, have accused the administration of disregarding court orders, of threatening judges, and attacking the independence of the legal profession. Those are seen as potential violations of the separation of powers and the rule of law. So those are the constitutional basis of that. A federal judge has ruled that activating the National Guard to assist ICE by exceeding statutory authority and without state consent could violate the 10th Amendment's division of powers. So there are a lot of constitutional challenges. If someone claims to support the Constitution, hold them to it. Have facts, have examples, have a conversation. All right? That's one in for a certain kind of person. Oh yeah, sorry, I thought I was done. Use of the Alien Enemies Act. The Trump administration has invoked the Alien Enemies Act. It is a wartime law, and it's being used during peacetime for the purpose of suppressing dissent and facilitating deportation. So that one is also being challenged in court. All right, next kind of person, fifth one. If someone genuinely appears to believe that these ICE mass deportations are being done in the interest of public safety, and one, you can give them all kinds of examples of people who posed no threat, right? There are so many. You can find them. They are abundant. They're just showing up to work sites. They're showing up to schools. They're showing up to graduations. They're showing up to baptisms. Like, they are showing up to places where it is very clear that these people pose no threats. But if you think that showing them the money trail might get them to believe differently, then lean into that. Core Civic Group, Geo Group. If you've not heard of these, I'm going to put some links in the description that you can watch and you can share. I don't find it as effective to share these things like to everybody. You can certainly like put them on your social media, but having individual conversations with people where they feel the investment of your time and energy, and they become more willing to hear you out and maybe listen and maybe watch and maybe do these things together instead of saying, just watch this, right? I have found those to be more time consuming, but also more productive. So I think that is a strategy that I really want to encourage you to try. So yeah, the money trail is insane. It's easy to follow. I'm sure it gets convoluted, but like at least at a mid-level, it's easy enough to follow. The numbers are out there. And when you see the financial motive for all of these detention centers, and it becomes very obvious why people are doing what they're doing. All right. Last one, if somebody identifies as a law and order person, right? I'm all about law and order. Then another approach could be not to argue about that. Instead, ask them to start contacting their senators and representatives and ask them to put pressure on the administration to go after the employers who hire these people. The employers profit from and enable what this person has just told you is an immigration problem because they're all about law and order. Well, the billionaires and millionaires and business owners knowingly hiring folks are also violating laws. Don't let them be exempt from all this law and order. Don't leave them out of the justice part, right? You can give them a sample script. You can say, here you go. Let me help you find your representatives. Here are their phone numbers and their emails. Let me help you find your senators. Here are their phone numbers and their emails. Here's a script you can give them. If you want law and order, I support you. I just want to make sure that you believe that everybody should be following the law. And if that's true, you should have no issue reaching out to them and saying, also hold the employers accountable. All right, so even though those weren't that wasn't the backstory of this issue, I kind of jumped in with some action steps. I told you. Give me a few weeks to get my bearings with this new series and format and everything. But I did want to, next step was a positive quote related to this. So I just read not too long ago that a growing group of tow truck drivers in Los Angeles are reportedly stalking ICE convoys so that they can tow away all the unmarked ICE vans and SUVs that get parked incorrectly the moment the agents get out to start looking for people to abduct and detain. I love to see the resistance in all of these creative forms. They're not breaking any laws. They're like, hey, they might be parking illegally. Let me just see if that's the case because, I'm supposed to tow them when they break the law and park illegally. Oh, look, they did. Bye. All right, that's my good news related to that. Next, because this is probably running longer than I expected, I'm going to go through some additional action steps that aren't just one-on-one conversations. The Immigrant Legal Resource Center, I will put a link to the particular post that I am referencing, but has a lot of free downloadable tools. And this just says easy ways to support your local immigrant community. Free downloadable tools. So there is these printable red cards. They're like a know your rights. If you are like, I don't know the immigrants in my community, do you know places where there are typically immigrants or even just brown people who might be targeted, right? Then drop them off in the bathrooms at those places, hand them out. People hand them out at protests. I see these cards get handed out, not nearly enough, but at random places is my point. So there are dozens of languages to choose from. You can print them in any color, obviously, but they are wallet-sized cards that detail your constitutionally protected rights and help immigrants of any status assert their constitutional rights when they are confronted by an ICE or DHS agent. It's the difference of knowing you don't have to open the door to this person, right? Or you don't have to get out of your car, whatever. It can't hurt. It may not always be enough, but it can't hurt, and it's a good idea to help educate people about their constitutional rights. There are solidarity signs that you can print, and this says signs for any location that let your community know you stand with them. And they tell ICE or Department of Homeland Security that they will need a judicial warrant to enter non-public areas. So if you have a private business or you put this in your home or whatever, it's just a way of saying everybody is welcome here except ICE. And if you are ICE, you're going to have a judicial warrant. And then they have emergency family preparedness plans. They're toolkits that have a plan of action if a parent is taken into custody, with information about childcare and fillable checklists so that people can be prepared. Is it horrifying that this is what it comes to? Obviously, yes. But if you can empower somebody in the meantime, while you're using the 5 Calls app and letting your senators and your representative know that you're outraged about this, if you can, among all of the other things that you may already be doing or you're going to learn about through this series and through other people, if you can add this as an extra step, you can even just share these digitally. You can just make sure that you share this link with individuals, encourage people, post it regularly. It doesn't get old. It's valid information. And just following the Immigrant Legal Resource Center is a good idea. Follow the account so that you know when they put out resources like this. And then there are some one-pagers that are for easy posting. There's a one-page flyer that offers 5 key rights to know when you're confronted by ICE or DHS, and it's got English and Spanish options for that one. And it says these tools and more are available at ilrc.me/protect. So again, I will try to make sure that I link that in the description, but wanted to give you that. For some good news that's unrelated, I just read like lots of cool things, and I might pick India architecture again soon because there's some good things going on there. But one that I read most recently was about a substance called sugarcrete. And in 2023, the University of East London developed this material making basically bricks out of the waste that is generated by producing sugar, by processing sugar from sugarcane. India is the global leader in sugarcane production, so they have a lot of this waste, but it can be like compressed, and you add a couple things to it. Anyway, I'll find the video and I'll put it in the description so you can watch it, and I won't get tagged for like copyright infringement or anything. But there's been the world's first school made out of sugar bricks. So cool. It's like totally affordable. They didn't patent it. That's another badass thing about this. They didn't patent it. It's open source technology. So they're like, if you want to learn, if you're in a country that has a fair amount of sugar production and you would like to learn how to make sugarcrete bricks and start building with them, here's everything you need to know. It's free. We're not looking for ways that we can profit. We are looking for ways that we can benefit the planet and benefit communities who can use this technology. Have fun. I love it. I love it. I think sometimes certain sources want us to believe that everything is hopeless and that we should just throw in the towel. And stories like that are a needed reminder that there's a whole lot to hope for, that there's a whole lot worth fighting for, that there is a whole lot of creativity and innovation and people who genuinely care. And that is worth celebrating. That's worth hanging on to. All right. I haven't dressed the doll yet because I'm doing this on my lunch break, but hang tight for like 2 seconds, and through the magic of editing, I'm going to be right back and show you a doll whose outfit I just dressed. So, all right. Be kind, but let me know what you think of this series. Do you think you're going to watch it? Do you think it'll be helpful? Do you appreciate that I'm kind of separating out a little bit more, like more overtly political with a little bit of dolls versus like mostly dolls with a little bit of, you know, my views in politics sprinkled in? Will that be helpful for you? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. All right. Take care. I will see you again very soon. Yay, magic of editing. It's almost bedtime for me. So running back on here just to show you, one, there is Scarlett, and she is an FAO Schwartz limited edition doll that American Girl came out with a couple years ago. My wife and I went halves on her. We bought her used from another collector, and she came to us without the outfit. So she doesn't have the outfit, but also we would never use it anyway, and this way we saved a lot of money. And she's been in that outfit, by the way, for, well, it's a winter outfit. You do the math. I'm filming this in July. So too damn long is how long she's been in that outfit. Would you like to see her in something more seasonally appropriate? All right, so toes to head. She has only glasses on from American Girl. Everything else is not American Girl. So these are some of my favorites. They are from whatever brand Joanne used to carry, Joanne Fabric. The skirt is from Our Generation, and if it did have a tag, I can't tell if it did. Seems like it didn't, but if it did, I would have taken it off anyway. And then she's got a few different bracelets. I made them all, and they all match perfectly. This top is, I think, from a Neeks boutique, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, it's from Etsy. And then the necklace I made, the earrings I made, and the glasses are obviously the ombre glasses from American Girl. Further I put her back, you're not going to be able to see her because I'm in portrait video mode, but look how stinking cute she is. Yeah, lest this be a video on a doll channel without actually having some doll content. Thank you, Scarlett. All right, for the second time, thank you. I will see you soon. Take care.